All right, look, I've known the reasons, and I guess we could debate this, but I've known the reasons why marijuana and sports betting have not been legalized in the state of Texas. And I can run down those reasons. It's not real complicated, but I think most people, if you live in a big city, you're still confused by it. And I can run down the reasons why marijuana and sports betting have not been legalized. But here's what I do think is added to it now. And you can feel free to disagree, but I think something now has been added to the list, because the reason why sports betting and marijuana have not been legalized, it's a pretty short list. It's a very simple explanation. So I'll do this because I've been talking about these sinful products for 10, 15, 20 years now. Always start with a question. So just deal with it this way. Taxpayers, Texas voters, are we getting closer or further away from legalizing the sinful products? That's sports gambling and cannabis. Are we getting closer to those things being approved by you, the voters, one day you having a chance to vote on those two issues? Or are we getting further away? I think I've always used the over-under on when one or both, sports betting or marijuana, the over-under on when one or both would pass. Because if it comes up for a vote, you should know this. If it comes up for a vote, you'll pass it. But that's not the point. I'm going to set the over-under at 5 years. I honestly think it's closer to 10. But for conversation's sake today, and there's a reason why I'm bringing this up, I think it's probably closer. We'll just use 5 today. Over-under. Before you get to vote on this. For one or both, over or under 5 years. Most states, as you know, have legalized both. Not Texas. I've always joked that we would be the last place on earth, okay? The last place on earth to legalize marijuana and or sports betting. But I'm wondering if either happens. And I'm actually wondering now if, like, between the two of them, if the pendulum hasn't swung one way or the other. So before you say, yeah, most people in this state are in favor of it, and they are. All the data says that most people would be in favor of legalizing both. And it's really not even close. And that's been true for quite some time. And that's what confuses a lot of you. You're thinking, wait a second, Jeff, if most people are in favor of this, wouldn't it make sense? That's where you get confused. See, that's where you don't understand the reality, the pathetic reality of Texas politics. Politics in this state, just so you know why the majority doesn't matter. Okay, politics in this state live by what I call the 3% rule. The 3% rule is that 3% of voters decide all elections. 3% of voters decide everything. And it sounds crazy, and it's backed up by a lot of data. In fact, Texas Monthly did a story on this a few years ago with these really cool Venn diagrams. It was disturbing as heck, but it's true. It's accurate. Republican primary voters, that's approximately 3%. I mean, it could be a little more, but 3% of voters in the state of Texas decide everything. Now, if you're saying, I'm still confused, Jeff, I'm telling you, don't be confused. Think just like this. Older, rural, white. There. End of story. Won't happen. Period. Blue hair voters in primaries get what they want and what they don't want. And what they don't want is legalizing marijuana or legalizing the devil that is gambling. They've said it over and over again. So let me get back to this. So are we moving closer to one or the other being legalized or further away? That's what I think is interesting now. And I'm guessing, this is a guess, feel free to disagree. I'm guessing now, because of the scandals, because of the stories around sports betting, I'm guessing we're moving further away from both, but certainly further away from sports betting. I don't even know if there's recent data that backs up that we're moving further away from sports betting. But I used to think the first sin that would pass, the first sin that you would have a chance would be online sports betting. I thought that up until probably a year ago. I'm thinking now that has an even less of a chance than marijuana. Let's see if you agree. Right? In other words, I don't think either one of them passed in 5 years. I'm not even sure 10. But of the two, I think the least likely to pass would be sports betting, and that's because of the news stories, the new scandal. Go back in time. Proof of this, proof that not even money can influence this. The Adelson family is a family that made their money off of gambling. They own the Sands Corporation. They're multi-billionaires. They are arguably, I'm not even sure it's an argument, they're arguably the most influential family in all of Republican politics, certainly in the state of Texas. What they want, they get. They bought the Dallas Mavericks with the idea that this is going to be our on-ramp. We're going to have a base in the state of Texas where we can use our money, use our influence to open up what will be the biggest sports marketing or sports betting market in the entire country. That's what they thought. That was their calculus. That was their play. And it hadn't happened. They've swung and missed. Not even they could move the needle. So now what? I think neither has any chance anytime soon. I really do. I don't know. You know, it's hard to measure, right? Because you could be stuck in a big city. You could be stuck in Austin. You could be in Dallas or Houston or San Antonio. And that's not the political world of the state of Texas. You've got to go find grandma in some rural area, and she's going to decide the election. What does she care about? So here's the deal with sports betting. And I even think most of you now probably would admit, man, I'm a little more uncomfortable with it. I don't know if I'd go for it now. Because I got to believe somewhere there's going to be data soon. And that is, I don't think this passes anytime soon. And I think this goes from rural blue hair grandma votes to a lot of you saying, you know, since these scandals have come out, I'm moving further and further away. Okay? And I think that's where you are. What has to happen in the state of Texas for any of these two sinful products to be passed are a couple of things. Number one, the state of Texas has to be desperate for money. And over the past few years, the state of Texas has not been desperate for money. That's how years ago, for those who don't know, that's how the lottery was sold. It was sold to people that, listen, we know you don't like this. We know you find this sinful. We find it sinful ourselves, but we want to raise the money for public education. And that's how it was sold to the people of Texas. We would have to be, to the average blue-haired voter, we would have to be desperate for some cash for those in public office to say, look, Grandma, I don't like it either. I think it's sinful, but right now we need the money. And right now, the state of Texas, at least for right now, because of the economy the last few years, the state of Texas has not been desperate for money. Okay? Until the state gets desperate, I don't think there's going to be a push for new revenue streams. I just don't see it coming. Two, the blue hairs just find it despicable. The blue hairs certainly find gambling despicable, but I think more than that, cannabis and marijuana even more so. Those people. And until the lieutenant governor of the state of Texas even moves an inch, he won't. That's Dan Patrick. None of this stuff is even considered. But here's the thing that I think is a new problem. See if you agree with this. The scandals in basketball in particular, the scandals all around betting in particular, I think it might scare off more of you. I think you actually could find yourself, and well, a lot of you may have already been fine with it. I'm not saying you have to gamble, have to smoke marijuana or use marijuana or gummies or anything else, but legalizing. My argument, just so you know, my argument for a lot of things, whether you want to do them or not, are lifestyle choices, and that is it's not worth the time, nor the money, nor the manpower to make these things illegal. That should be the litmus test, in my opinion, of taxpayers. Whether I use or you want to use cannabis doesn't matter. My issue is it's not worth the courts, the cops, the tickets, the fight. It's not a good investment to make more things illegal. In fact, it's a bad investment. That's my argument. Very few people agree with me, by the way. But the last few months, and I'm wondering if the Adelsons are saying, you know what? Let's just pack our bags and get the heck out of here. First, the blue hairs got us. The blue hairs didn't want any part of betting. And now the scandals, maybe that's influencing you. Does it? right? Think about this. The stories that have come out about the NBA prop bets. Does that make you rethink whether it should be legalized? I'm not saying you think it's a great idea. I'm not saying you want to do it. What I'm saying is your chance to vote to legalize these sins. Do you find the stories, the NBA stories on the prop bets, the college stories about the prop bets, the Major League Baseball, the bizarre Major League Baseball about the pitch counts? Do those prop bet stories make you move further and further away from legalizing or even wanting to vote at all? I'm guessing, yeah, really. I think it may a lot of you in big cities, not blue hairs in small towns. I think a lot of you might be saying, you know what, it's not worth the hassle. I don't know if I trust it. I think it's a new element to this whole thing. I think it's added to the unlikely scenario that you get to vote on it. And I'm starting to think now, because of the scandals in sports betting, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing because that means above board betting is working, but I don't think most people see it that way. I think you see it as an added hassle, as a dangerous hassle. So I'm now pivoting to thinking, heck, we might get cannabis before we get sports betting. There you go. So of the two sinful products of which you will not get to vote on them, agree or disagree, I don't think any time less than 5 years. But of the two, I think because of the scandals, I think cannabis might have a slightly better chance. And you don't have to do this thing with me and go, well, Jeff, it's sleep and all this. You don't have to convince me. Like I said, I don't think it's worth our time and energy to make more things illegal. But of the two, right? You had this old Venn diagram of the two. I'm starting to think that cannabis might have a better chance than betting. And I think cannabis might have a better chance to betting because of the terrible stories that have come out in the NBA, in college sports, and in Major League Baseball. I don't think either happens within 5. I'm not even sure you could sell me on 10, but feel free to disagree.
Hey, here's a recommendation backed up by my own experience, a great experience. And that is, I've been a client of DJC Law, and I can tell you this. You're going to get 3 things with DJC Law. You'll notice it right away. The difference is you will get peace of mind. They will take care of every single detail perfectly, and you will get the result you deserve. If you're injured by the negligence of someone else, fighting with an insurance company for any reason, trust me when I tell you, you will need DJC Law. Dan Christensen and his team of attorneys have a remarkable track record. I've known Dan a long time. He's a military vet. He's board certified in civil trial law, and I've been a client. So you can trust them. You will get the result you deserve. Check out teamjustice.com, and you'll see thousands of 5-star reviews. The bottom line is, if you're in an accident, you need DJC Law. Contact them right away. 512-888-9999.